Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another Patron Pre-Show.
Welcome. Oh, see them filing in. Boy, I thought they were well-dressed last week. Now look. Gosh. You know, I realize that Easter time is the period to look elegant, ladies and gentlemen. And I also admit you can't look too elegant. But boy, if you guys could, you'd be doing it right now. Man.
I'll say.
That one lady, she looks like a Christmas tree. Look at all the diamonds she's wearing.
She's bling-blinging, as we would say.
I would say. I don't. And you know, it's one thing. Usually, people wear silver or platinum or gold. Lady's dripping in all of it. I'll tell you what, ma'am. I don't know where you live, but I hope you came here by armored car, because I swear.
Redefining glamorous.
I'll say. Woof. All right. Good to have you back.
Absolutely. And we're very happy to welcome the new patrons this week. We've got a bunch of new patrons this week. Most notably, James, a new top floor executive. You've got a new boss, Charles. How do you feel about that?
Well, this is a boss I've actually known in other contexts down through the years. And I won't say that... let's just say that he has an ethical standard high above many of his other colleagues on the top floor office.
Well, we'll see how it works out. Well, that could mean
because he has such a high ethical standard, I would definitely keep him away from the compliance section.
I mean, this is why we have a board of directors, right? I mean, a meeting of the minds, right? Yeah. Because usually, we sort things out in the
usher a guy into a cloakroom with a hypo of sodium pentothal. I know how that works.
So, I'm sure everything will work out.
Gotta get your mind right.
We'll show him the ropes. We'll show him how things are done, and he'll settle in.
Yeah, I'm sure. Play along is the word Uncle Giuseppe would have used. Mr. Ward, it's wonderful to have you in the outfit. I mean, the opera. It's wonderful to have you on the board. It's great. What we really need is somebody like you with respectable credentials. I remember he was big on respectable credentials. He used to say that. He used to say, when you're looking for frontmen and cutouts, they've got to be the very best.
Gosh.
You want some of these Ivy League lawyers. You don't want somebody who looks like they just came up from the Bronx,
All right. All right. Bunch of questions from Diego.
Okay, Diego. We're ready to go. St. Didacus's own.
What?
St. Didacus's own. Diego is Spanish for Didacus. What did you think it was?
Diego. I don't know. San Diego is St. Didacus?
Yeah.
Huh. I always thought it was something else.
No, it's St. Didacus, the patron of the Canaries.
Can Charles go over why he doesn't like the caricature of Robin Hood and why? I believe it has to do with stealing from a legitimate authority, but extra explanation is required.
Well, it's not just stealing from legitimate authority, because what is forgotten is that in reality, Robin Hood is not simply someone stealing from legitimate authority. He is someone at war with usurped authority. Remember, he is, and it does stay in the versions of the story that we have. It is acknowledged, admitted, that Robin Hood is loyal to King Richard, and in most versions of the story that comes out. But it's an important thing to bear in mind. So if you were to put the thing into a Revolutionary War context, Robin Hood is a loyalist, not a Whig, not a rebel.
Counter-revolutionary.
Precisely right. And he's fighting for the true king against the usurper and the usurper's minions and the allies of the usurper, who, on top of being a usurper, is also an oppressor, which usurpers tend to be.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder what this question came from for Diego. Later he asks about Solange Hertz. We'll get to that question. But I remember Solange Hertz wrote about her dislike of the tale of Robin Hood. And she had a different take where it's anti-authority, anti-legitimate authority, in terms of the Sheriff of Nottingham, stuff like that. I don't know if I agree with it completely, but I understand what she sent.
She was critiquing the popular view of it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The popular view. Yeah, that's what I was kind of going to get at. Is she's sensitive to the popular view, and I would say just American dislike in general of authority. All authority has to be, it's consented to by the people. It's like,
Well, see, that's why you remember when we had the referendum on whether or not to wear masks and shut down all the businesses. You remember that?
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah, because Americans are very freedom-minded.
Yeah, the people decided. Yeah.
Yeah, because we don't take no guff from nobody. We're the people.
But yeah, so anyway, I think a true or the correct view on the concept of authority is really important. It's something Americans lack in general.
And we lack it because, in a real sense, we fought a revolution against it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it makes sense given where we've come from.
Yeah, I mean, the problem was, I've just read an interesting book called God Against the Revolution, which is basically it's a look at the pamphlets and sermons of loyalist clerics, usually Anglican, in the colonies in the beginning of the Revolution. Now, you got to bear in mind, the American Revolution on a local level, apart from the battles and the armies and so forth, the loyalists in the various towns were all stepped on real hard. And they were stepped on by people who up until recently, I mean, in terms of your living back then, they were just normal people. And suddenly they're in charge. And they're imposing oaths. I've created a new government, and you have to swear allegiance to it, or you're a traitor to your country and will be mistreated. Well, what I find interesting is that the loyalists, in their arguments, and I got to tell you, their arguments were kind of vitiated in a way, because they had to somehow defend the glorious revolution, so-called, of 1688, while fighting the American Revolution of 1776.
That's a brilliant point.
Well, it's not original to me, but it's true, and it gave them some problems. But on the other hand, they were able to resort to the Bible and various other incontrovertible defenses against rebellion and revolution against lawful authority. And the thing is, what was very important to them, it was very important in Catholic circles too, was the difference between authority and power. And it is a distinction that we Americans lost to a great degree at the Revolution. What we attempted to do was to replace the authority of the king with the authority of the ballot box. And it worked to a degree, but the problem is that the ballot box is not as tangible as a king. And as we saw in this last election, and 20 years ago in the election of 2000, if the vast majority of people are not agreed upon the outcome of an election, i.e. that it was fair, by and large fair and free, in our system, the authority of the president is severely tarnished. I mean, that was Bush's problem in his first term, and it's Biden's problem now. There's a huge chunk of people who believe that he is not really the legitimate president. Now, whether or not that's true, who knows? I mean, that's, as they say, a rabbit hole I'm not going to go down. But what I will say because we've lost that, it's very difficult for us to understand the story of Robin Hood as it was meant. Because Robin Hood is, in fact, a defender of authority against power. He is defending the authority of King Richard the Lionheart against the power usurped by King John, by Prince John, as he was then, and his appointee, the Sheriff of Nottingham.
That opinion is very off the menu.
Well, that's what we specialize in. You came into a Chinese restaurant, you ordered pizza, we brought it for you.
I mean, you compare it to Robin
Williams.
Russell Crowe's Robin Hood, and I couldn't stand that one because I think his character had some line against oaths and just be what you are or something like that, where it's like, it was kind of like a strike against knights and stuff,
Which is complete drivel.
Yeah. I can't stand
the
that.
proof of the pudding again. Robin Hood is so bad, except for Men with Tights, which of course, obviously Mel Brooks has always got to the very heart of everything, as he always does. I don't think anyone really understood World War II quite the way he showed in Springtime for Hitler. But he has an understanding for history the way few of us do. But with that single exception, I have not seen a Robin Hood since Errol Flynn, or maybe Disney, that was really worth watching. Though there was a series in the 50s, it was pretty good, television series. I have to say that the modern Robin Hood that most impressed me as annoying was Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, with
Kevin Costner, your bud.
The only thing I've ever seen him in, I liked him in, was Field of Dreams.
You didn't even see Dances with Wolves?
I saw Dancing with Wolves.
Waterworld?
I saw that too. I said the only thing I liked him in. The only thing I saw that I liked him in was Field of Dreams, and that's because he played what he is kind of an annoying boomer dweeb.
He actually, he did really good in that Western. I think it's Open Country or Open Range with Robert Duvall, where they're two cowboys. That's a really good one, actually. I thought he did a really good job on that one. But other than that, I agree.
I haven't seen it, so I can't say. But with Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, the one scene in it that was worth it is at the very end. Spoiler alert! Well, Robin is there dweebing around because he's, Robin Hood, Prince of Dweebs, when King Richard returns with a couple of knights from the Holy Land. And he's played by Sean Connery.
Oh.
And even though Costner never leaves the screen, you don't see him. He's completely overwhelmed by this presence. You love or hate Sean Connery. That guy knew how to act, and he was a presence. He was Sean Connery.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites.
He was an incredible actor, and of course, frankly, the older he got, the better he got. I mean,
I think
when he was
too.
Bond, what's that?
I think so too. What's his early Hitchcock one? Marley,
which I've never seen.
Wow.
Yeah, there were lacunae in my film viewing, no doubt about that. But as James Bond, he was. I mean, again, I don't think he's my favorite Bond, but that doesn't say much because I'm not what you would call the biggest Bond fan. But as he really came into himself as he got older, The Hunt for Red October, I thought was a superb film.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, I mean, and he did a number of, and of course, I liked him in Indiana Jones. Oddly enough,
he was amazing in that. Amazing.
Yeah.
You know what? One movie of his that everyone forgets, no one talks about anymore, is The Name of the Rose.
Yes, and he was very good in that.
He was a monk.
He was, and he played it well.
Yeah.
And another one he did, which I really, really loved. Well, actually, the two of them came out around the same time. One was called The Wind and the Lion. about which was sort of a fictionalized version of the American intervention in Morocco in 1904, in which he played a Berber chieftain and did a really good job
Wow.
of it. Yeah.
That's pretty exotic.
It was, but he did a splendid job. And the other he did that I really liked, is same year it came out, was called The Man Who Would Be King, based on a Kipling story. And it was funny that in the one, he represents British civilization, even if it's the raggy end. And in the other, he's a Berber chief. But both superb films. And I was very unhappy when Connery died. But,
Oh,
yeah.
we're forgetting I'm really embarrassed because we're forgetting him in a role.
Oh, yeah, Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
He's Jim Malone in The Untouchables.
Yes.
He's kind of the opposite of Officer Clancy, if you will. He's the one Irishman who's not Officer Clancy.
No, I say, now hold on there just a minute. I think you're tarring this with kind of a bad brush, don't you know? And you know how unfair his portrayal were. They had to bring in a Scotsman. That's right.
That's another Kevin Costner movie too, and it's funny because he's so horrible in that, but that movie is so good because of everyone around him. Like Robert De Niro as Capone is epic to me. Like,
no, I agree.
That was a really good movie.
Yeah, it was the last one I saw with your Uncle Giuseppe, and he liked it. Well, he told me afterwards that he hated it because usually Capone's played as the villain.
Well, Capone was the villain. What are you talking about?
It's not what Giuseppe told me. He said it was misunderstood. I said, but Giuseppe, what about the St. Valentine's Day Massacre? He said they had it coming.
All right, Charles, all right.
Move along. Nothing to see here. You've all got questions to answer. Now move along.
All right.
All right, boys, you've had your fun. Stop making fun of the poor old man and move along. What's your next question? Enough of that now. Can you imagine poor Don Giuseppe? Himself, not 20 years in the grave and he's being abused. Move along.
Can Charles also go over why he doesn't donate to the Salvation Army? I understand that because they are a church themselves or something akin to that, it is wrong to donate to them. I've seen a church of theirs near my work. Also, what is his stance about charity and almsgiving? Or are they only legit within the church?
As so often happens with me, I want to answer the second first, and then the first second, if that makes sense. No, I mean there are any number of agencies that are outside the church that you could feel okay to give to, depending upon how well they spend the money and so on and what it's going to go to. My father, for reasons I have never really understood, could not abide the Red Cross. I don't know why. My brother and I have been thinking about this. Dad, he had very definite opinions about a lot of things, but for some reason, and mind you, I'm not saying that I share his views either, because I don't know what they were based on. And it's not like he ever sat me down and said, stay away from the Red Cross, they're evil and they sacrifice children. But he did not like them. And the only thing I can figure is he must have had a bad experience with the Red Cross during the war.
Yeah, that's what I was going to guess. Because it's their care packages and stuff that they send?
I guess. I mean, care, I think, was a separate program. But whatever it was, I suspect it went to the war because whenever he'd get vague about things, my dad was never one to hold back his views. As I said, everyone has a right to my opinion. But the thing is that he was never very clear as to why he disliked them. So my suspicion is that it goes back to the war for some reason.
Okay.
But at any rate, with the Salvation Army, and now I can move forward, as we like to say today when we've denied all knowledge. Moving forward, the what do you call it? The Salvation Army as a church. Um, I have a particular difficulty with uh, not simply that it's a non-Catholic church, but also what its peculiar doctrines are. And I say peculiar doctrines within a Protestant setting. Now, bear in mind, General William Booth, who founded the Salvation Army, and who was, by all accounts, a very dedicated gentleman, was a Methodist, and he was in the London slums of the 19th century. And these are horrible places. They gave us Jack the Ripper. So it's not like he popped out of a turnip and didn't know what was happening. The reason why he abolished sacraments in his churches, and that's my big problem with it, no baptism and no notion of any kind of communion, which even by Protestant standards is kind of peculiar, is that he thought they led to quarreling over doctrine, which is true, because obviously different denominations have different views of both baptism and communion. But to get rid of them entirely so as to avoid any argument, I don't know what to call that.
One word comes to mind: Unitarian.
Well, yeah, except they believe in the Trinity. And they believe in the Bible, and
Well, the Unitarians just got rid of that because that causes squabble too.
Well, yeah, the methodology. I agree with you that the methodology is similar.
That's all I meant. It's like, well, we have to remove that because that causes problems. And so,
yeah, but with him, he had his very specific thing, which was he wanted to eliminate. It was just he wanted to eliminate any kind of fighting over doctrine that would get in the way of helping the poor.
I see.
So, as I say, I understand the motivation, but it shows a view of Christianity that I really, to say that means that you don't think the sacraments are important.
Well, why was it necessary to go into that branch? And actually be a religion rather than perhaps just a nonprofit. That's like the pro-life movement being a religion and eliminating, all these doctrines for the sake of not causing problems, right? Like, why don't you just cut that part out? You know what I mean?
I hadn't thought of it, but that's a real good simile. So, point one for you there. That's a really good simile.
Okay.
No, I'm serious. I'm serious. It hadn't occurred to me, but it's a good question. It's not one I can answer, obviously. I'm not General Booth, and I'm not a Salvationist. However, I was present at an award ceremony they put on, and the recipient was the great Angela Lansbury, who has done a lot of work for the Salvation Army.
Mm.
A lot of people do. And I'd be lying if I said that they don't do a lot of objectively good charity work.
Yeah.
It's just that the religious programming that goes with it is extremely defective.
Yeah. So you didn't answer this yet, but we're guessing it is wrong to donate to them.
Yeah, I would say. Unless it's 50 cents to keep the bell ringer from strangling you at Christmas.
Yeah.
Well, you know how it is. You're going into the post office. There's Santa Claus ringing the bell at you. What are you supposed to do? Throw him a quarter.
All right. For the second part, I just wanted to say something that I think you might be able to expound on. But it's important. It's something that I realized in my growth when it comes to stance about charity and almsgiving. Are they only legit within the church? I think previously, before this year, I had only given to, almsgiving and things to entities where I thought they would do something with it. For example, I wouldn't give it to bums on the street because what are they going to do with it, right? But I think one of the priests kind of changed. I think maybe you might have changed my mind too. I had gotten feedback from several places where you've got to scratch that because you're not just giving it for them, you're giving it for you. And that
Precisely.
it's an added mortification to give money to a person when they're not going to do with it what you want them to do per se.
Yeah.
And so, but you're giving it freely. And I think
Yes.
that's one of the things, one of the priests thing that sticks in my head is we have to drop our ego so that we can love for more freely. And so I think that relates to this, is we have to drop our ego so that we can be charitable more freely.
And that attitude will carry over into other parts of life. I mean, I'll give you an example. When I was 12 or 13, I was walking with my dad down the street in Hollywood, California. And a bum comes up and he asks my dad for $1 or something. I forget what it was. And I would say it was $1. And Dad gives it to him. And off the guy goes. Well, as soon as he was out of earshot, I said, Dad, how could you give that guy $1? And I said, he's just going to spend it on booze. And he looked at me and he said, well, firstly, son, I'm not the kind of hypocrite that would deny another man the kind of thing I enjoy myself, because I like a drink. Secondly, it says in the gospel that almsgiving covers a multitude of sins. And unlike his oh so perfect younger son, your old father has a lot of sins to be covered. And thirdly, if you live the way that guy does, you need a drink. I've never forgotten that. And it does alter your way of things. You know our mutual friend of ours, Mike, yeah?
Oh, okay. I'm sure I will know once you start talking.
You know who I mean.
Okay.
Well,
oh, yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is years ago. This is like 25 years ago. You may not even have been born yet, but it was a long time ago. And it was a party at his place. We were running low on food and booze. So we went to the nearby Gelson's to stock up. As we're getting into the lot, this old black fellow comes up to me. And he says, Mister, can you give me $5 to get back to L.A.? And I said, no, I'll give you $5, but if I were you, I'd spend it on booze. I wouldn't spend it on the bus. He says, no, I'm telling you, I'm just in it for the bus. I said, you spend on whatever you want. When it's yours, it's yours. I'm just telling you, if I were in your shoes, I'd spend it on booze. I wouldn't spend it on the bus. So I gave him the $5, off he goes. We go into the supermarket and we're getting the food and all that. Then we go into the wine section, and there's this guy, the same guy, fingering a bottle of cheap port. And I went up to him and I said, give me my money back. And he looked at me and said, well, I said, give it back. And he did. And I said, I'll get you a decent bottle, but you're not spending my money on this rot gut. And I did.
You're playing games with him. That's funny because he probably thought you're taking your money back, but then you're getting him something more expensive.
Yeah, I got him something decent. Look, I knew bloody well he would spend it on booze. Of course he was going to spend it on booze. But it wasn't my place to refuse it to him when I was there for that express purpose myself.
Cheap port. I never drank the stuff.
No, you never had any. No. Well, the one step lower is what used to be called cooking wine.
People,
they cooked with it.
I know, but how could you drink cooking wine? That's what I'm trying to.
Well, with your mouth, how do you drink anything? It's the way you drink Listerine, the way we did when I was a cadet.
Wait, what?
Yeah, Listerine parties. Listerine.
Did you gargle it or did you drink it?
No, we drank it.
I don't understand.
It's disgusting. You can get a buzz off it. It's disgusting. I wouldn't recommend it. When you're young and stupid, you'll drink whatever will give you a buzz, It's true. What did you think Listerine was? Why do you think it gargles? It's alcoholic.
That's why you guys did it.
Yeah. Oh, it certainly wasn't for the taste, I assure you.
You guys have problems, man. I mean, you guys
You would
are.
have had to have been there to understand. It was kind of a high pressure environment.
I,
But the other story along these lines that I'm reminded of was again the old the parties running out of booze and food routine. And this time, my friend Chantal and I were in the beautiful Beechwood Market. I may have told the story before, but it's one of my favorites. The Beechwood Market, high above Beechwood Canyon in Hollywood, California. And it's an upscale market to this day. It's still a very nice place. So we go in, we're shopping around, and we saw this old lady. And I tell you what, she was like one of our guests here. She was dressed to the nines. I mean, age appropriate. She wasn't one of these old ladies trying to look young. No. But she looked so good. The right amount of jewelry, the right amount of makeup, dressed beautifully to the nines. I mean, you would want her for your grandmother. She was great. And she's pushing the shopping cart. And in the shopping cart, just two things. Cans of dog food and bottles of scotch. And lots of both.
So she's gonna get drunk with her dog, and that.
Chantal looks at it and she says to me, "What do you think that means?" And I said, "I think it's easier to keep down when it's marinated." And ever since then, when people ask me my retirement plan, I tell them dog food and scotch. Well, if it's all you can afford.
Wow.
Living in quiet luxury.
That's almost worthy of like an episode title if this was on the full episode. Dog food and scotch. Those are two things that
you don't often receive together, no. Glenfiddich and Alpo?
All right.
No, thank you. I'm more of a cow-can man myself. Actually, we could go a little wild, do the cat food thing. Maybe little friskies. Only add scotch instead of water. All right. We're resumed, ladies and gentlemen. My camera is a mind of its own, as you've noticed this evening, but that's all right. All right, let's recover, shall we?
All right. Since there is a bunch of important church writings from the last couple of centuries, have Charles and yourself, ever gracious Lord of Tumbler House, Don Vincenzo the Devout, patron saint of free shipping and handling, Archduke of limited time only, Earl of no CODs, Marquess of void where prohibited, Count of operator standing by, Baron of act now, Viscount of while supplies last, Knight of the Order of but wait there's more.
This is someone who really watches the show, I'll tell you.
No, Diego's a huge fan. No, absolutely. Compile a hearty list of encyclicals, letters, teachings, etc. from the modern period till today, 1800 to 2020. Oh, go ahead and do that for us, Charles. Don't be shy.
All right, fine. Most important writings? Fine. Gregory XVI, Mirari Vos, and Singulari Nos. That's Gregory XVI. Pius IX, The Syllabus of Errors. Leo XIII, Immortale Dei, Rerum Novarum. Dominice Cene. No, that's not. I don't know what Apostolice Curae, I meant. There's something else of his I wanted to. The name isn't coming.
Vehementer Nos? Is that a? Vehementer.
No, that's St. Pius X.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's good. And Singulari Quadam, since we're on Pius X, as well as oh gosh, I can't think of the Oath Against Modernism one, but that one.
We sell that on the store, and I can't remember it. Is it
I can't
Immortality Day?
No, Immortality Day is good too, but that's Leo 13th. Anyway, but we've got to move on because we got to be quick, remember. So Benedict the 16th, Benedict the 15th, I can't really think of anything. Pius the 11th, Quadragesimo Anno, Quas Primas, mit Brennender Sorge, Non Abbiamo Bisogno, and, oh golly, his one on communism, which I can't think of. All right, so then moving along to Pius the 12th, Mediator Dei, and oh man, what's the other one about doctrine? Oh gosh. Anyway, the doctrine one he did, which is it's the doctrinal counterpart of Mediator Dei, and I can't think of it for the life of me. Really bad. Okay, John the 23rd. I can't think of the name. The thing on the precious blood, and the one on Latin in seminaries and its requirement. Remember, that's good, Pope John. Pope Paul VI.
For the modernism one, is it Pascendi Dominici Gregis?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
Pascendi. Very good. And then Humanae Vitae for Paul VI. I'm slowing down. What do we got for John Paul II? Centesimus Anno, I guess. Oh, and Dominici Cene. Dominici Cene, definitely. That was the one wherein he basically single-handedly resurrected Eucharistic devotion.
John Paul II?
Yeah.
Nice.
See, well, you got to remember, and people forget this, that in the wake of Vatican II, adoration and benediction in most places vanished. Just poof, all gone, no more, bye-bye. I remember when I was studying for my Adulatory Day, the Catholic Scout Medal, back in 1976 and 7, in between watching episodes of Maude, I remember Father Dahlheimer, when I asked him about the monstrance, which I hadn't seen since childhood, he said, oh, we don't do the monstrance anymore. And that meant no benediction. So, I mean, it had pretty much gone from most places, but starting with Dominici Cene, John Paul II really, really pushed adoration and benediction. And you may remember that it was starting in that period that the perpetual adoration movement began. That was under John Paul II. People forget that. And I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, there are many things I'm in favor of in today's church. Yes, it's true. And one of them is the perpetual adoration movement. I've often thought that if ever I was going to do a good church guide, I'd have several criteria for, parishes around the country, regarding liturgy, regarding the architecture, the history, and so on. So, well, like you might have a church that had beautiful architecture, and that's all to be said for it. The music's bad, liturgy's awful, but go and look at it whenever nothing else is going on. Other churches may be ugly, but have really great liturgy. But there are quite a few who have, a lot of all of it. And then there are the Eastern Rite parishes, the Ordinariate parishes, and on and on. At any rate, that's what perpetual adoration is one of the criteria I would use if I ever did a good church guide. So now you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then as for Benedict the 16th, I could say Anglicanorum Cedibus, and I just said it earlier, Pontificium, Summorum Pontificium. His two decrees freeing the Latin Mass from any its illegal restrictions and establishing the Anglican Ordinariates. And Pope Francis, most importantly under Pope Francis. Yeah, okay, so there you go.
Didn't wasn't Light of Faith or something? Lumen Fide? Right? But then everyone was saying that Benedict did it?
Benedict wrote that, yeah. Because remember, Benedict wrote about charity and he wrote about hope.
But I mean, it's under Pope Francis's name.
Right, but it was mostly written by Benedict.
Yeah. Yeah. So is that one or no? Is that's okay?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. Toss it in.
All right.
Toss it on the pile.
All right. I just want to know Charles's opinion and friendship with Solange Hertz.
Well, I knew Solange. I was very fond of her. I didn't agree with her on everything by any stretch, but she was very good company. Very, very smart lady. I mean, there are people who are wrong because they're stupid or they're ignorant, and then there are people who you disagree with them, but you can see that they have reasons for holding what they hold. If you get what I mean, there's a big difference between the two. People of goodwill can differ on issues because they see the same facts differently. That's very different from forming conclusions based on no study and just your gut feeling, and that's how I feel about it, so drop dead. Solange wasn't like that. And even when I didn't think she was right, how do I put this? Well, this is an example I use all the time with her, and I'll use it now. Electricity. Now, she wrote about electricity as being the creation of the devil and so forth, although I noticed she used it. On the one hand, I don't really agree with her that it's the use of the devil, but where you should not simply discount what she wrote about it on that for that reason, is that she addressed the social and religious results of the use of electricity in a way that nobody else has. Now, her conclusion may not have been correct, although maybe it was. Maybe so. I mean, I don't think so, but I'd be the last person to say that she didn't, that she was completely wrong. Certainly, it led ultimately to man's loss of fear of the dark. And that has been a revolutionary thing in human history. Because we know that the dark still exists. We know that ghosts and demons and things that go bump in the night still operate in our world of electricity. But we don't have the fear of them, and so we don't have the fear of sin and evil that we had when the dark was everywhere.
Mm.
And she was, as I say, despite all that, a lot of fun and really, really good company. I remember we were at a conference years ago in El Paso, Texas. And we were in the bar of the hotel where the conference was going on. The waitress comes up, and I'd already gotten what she wanted from Solange. And I said, 2 Bloody Marys, please. And she looks at me and she says, Charles Coulombe. I said, sorry, 2 Bloody Betsy's, please. That was Solange Hertz. And that got a lot of giggling from both her and the waitress, I can tell you.
Yep. Yeah, she's very interesting. I highly recommend you read some of her writings from before the council, Charles. I know because they kind of were obscurely published before I republished them. But her attitude is completely different. Like the type of writing that, the very vicious, points that she makes in Americanism, Utopia Nowhere. She makes very strong points, but it's kind of a different tone before Vatican II.
Yeah.
For example, one of the really interesting ones, it's almost prophetic. She talks about how she doesn't like groups and talking about things in groups, particularly church groups. And I think she used an example of, I think her group kicked out some woman for some stupid reason. It was really ugly. But because the group did it together, it's like no one took responsibility. It just sort of happened. And she also doesn't like that because it's like everyone's giving their own interpretation of scripture and there's
Yep.
nothing right. So it's sort of this relativistic decision making where no one is actually accountable for anything. And, to me, that was ahead of its time a little bit.
Well, she was always that way. I mean, when I knew her, she really had very little use for groupthink, as she put it.
Yeah.
And, too, her husband was the first MIA in Vietnam. He was a diplomat, who was kidnapped by the Viet Cong in, I think, 1963. They never got him back, and I don't think they ever found out what had happened to him.
Yeah, so she had to raise 5 kids for a long time.
Yeah.
And based on the results, it looks like she did one really great job.
Yeah, I met a couple of her daughters, and they are extraordinarily nice people. I mean, really, really, really very, very pleasant folks, to say the least.
Yep.
And very fond of their mother, which is always it's another giveaway. If you want to, it's not an infallible rule, because sometimes good parents have bad kids and they hate their parents because they're blaming them for their own problems. But you show me kids who love their parents, even if you never meet the folks,
yeah,
because it's after they're dead or whatever, they've done something right.
Yeah. Okay. Question from Anita. Dear gentlemen, in a pre-show episode, Charles mentioned Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest's pallbearer's speech of 1875, in which the general accepted a bouquet of flowers from a black lady and kissed her on the cheek, causing bad cases of the vapors both north and south of the Mason-Dixon line. I would like to hear Charles's overall assessment of Nathan Bedford Forrest, a huge target of cancellation in our idiotic times. On the credit side of the ledger, I don't think it can be seriously disputed that Forrest was a gifted soldier and leader of men with a great deal of physical courage in battle. Moreover, he seems, at least toward the end of his life, to have genuinely sought reconciliation between whites and blacks. On the debit side, Forrest was a slave trader, though there is a pro-Confederacy literature that claims that he took pains to never separate families and to ensure the good treatment of slaves, and had such a reputation for benevolence that slaves actually hoped they would fall into his hands. Also on the debit side is the Fort Pillow Massacre and Forrest's founding membership in the Ku Klux Klan. How much truth is in the pro-Forrest and anti-Forrest claims? Was he on balance a good guy or bad guy?
Well, of course, you really have to survey where a guy ends up in his life to figure out whether he was a quote-unquote good guy or bad guy. I really do not know enough about his earlier career to tell you whether the pro-Forrest claims about his slave trading days are correct or not, because I don't know. I haven't studied them. I don't know. I also haven't studied the Fort Pillow Massacre, so I'm not going to comment on it. The one thing I can tell you about is his relationship with the Ku Klux Klan. That I know something about. Firstly, you've got to bear in mind what the Klan was and why it came into existence at the beginning. During the first few years after the Civil War to Reconstruction, in most of the South, folks who had fought for the Confederacy or had any position under the Confederate government were not able to vote, and they were not able to bear witness in court. Now, what does that mean when you say you can't bear witness in court? What that means is you cannot press charges. See, the reason why, if I were to come in right now and start smacking you around, the reason why you could have me arrested is because you're, unless somebody else saw it, like a policeman, your testimony is admissible in court. So you could press charges against me and the police will arrest me. And then, of course, is a question of, whether I get indicted or not, and then if I am indicted, whether or not I'm proved guilty in a court of law. But if it goes to a court of law, you have standing both to bring the case and to testify against me. But if you have no civil rights, you can't do that. So what does that mean? It means that you can't press charges. You can't testify against me. You have no standing in a court of law because you have no civil rights. I can come in and take your stuff. I can smack you around, or worse. I can do funny stuff to your women folk. All sorts of good things. And I'm sad to say that some people took advantage of this. And the result was the rise of, shall we say, illegal organizations that initially were supposed to be defending the rights of the disenfranchised against those who would abuse them. And that was the supposed reason for the Ku Klux Klan. That was why Nathan Bedford Forrest joined it. But within a year or two, the emphasis changed from defending whites to terrorizing blacks. And you can see how in the circumstances that might appear like a subtle line to cross. But it was a big line to General Forrest. Why is that? Well, he had commanded black troops in the Confederate Army. That's why. And his experiences in the war, again, I can't speak to what he was doing beforehand, but his experiences in the war commanding black troops are what turned him into the apostle of racial reconciliation that we know from later on. He joined the Klan and sponsored it initially because he thought that it was going to be defending the disenfranchised white inhabitants of the South. He quit it relatively quickly when he realized that it was going, shall we say, beyond that to be an anti-black thing. So that I know. So where does that leave us? On the whole, I think it speaks to his credit. And again, I think a great deal, I don't know anything about his dealings with blacks before the war, but I have absolutely no doubt that his attitude toward them after the war was based on his command of black troops in battle.
Yeah. Okay. So all in all, a little bit complicated. I don't like these. This was a great question, Anita, but in general, I don't like the desire to see people as totally good or totally bad, you know? Yeah. Like, I know what that's rooted in. It's rooted in a desire to be united to the rest of, to everybody and live in peace and harmony. But, you know, it's just, you know, human weakness where it's like, okay, is this guy totally good or totally bad? You know, and I for me, myself, I personally try to say, okay, this was a good decision. This was a bad decision. This was a flawed decision where he kind of did the best he could, but it's complicated and flawed. You know, you take each action on its own merits, you know, in my opinion.
And of course, always bearing in mind that we have 20/20 hindsight and they didn't.
That too. And also that we're coming from a different place with different, what's the word? Because you always point this out.
Different values.
Different
values. I mean, where they saw slavery before the war as defendable, we see infanticide as good.
Yeah.
You know, they traded in human beings. We just slaughter them.
Yeah.
As long as they're invisible. So, you know, we all have our own moral codes.
Yeah. All right. Last question for the pre-show from Andrew.
Right. Yes.
Being a native New Yorker who grew up within its signal, I am sure Charles is familiar with WFUV, broadcast out of the Jesuit Fordham University in the Bronx. It has become my family's custom to listen to WFUV on our way to get donuts after Mass on Sundays, because my kids love the Celtic Music Hour and the great Irish music they play. One day while listening, they aired a news report from an affiliate in Dublin about a recent investigation into mother-baby homes in Ireland. I couldn't make out much of what it was saying because my children were upset that the music had stopped and were letting their voices be heard. But it seems to suggest that children were being taken away from their birth mothers in Ireland, presumably against their wills, and being put up for adoption in the United States, never to see their birth mothers again. Furthermore, they seem to be blaming the church in Ireland for this. What does Charles know about this scandal and mother-baby homes in general? Is this a legitimate scandal, or is this just another way for the secular press in Ireland to attack the church? I'd also be interested to know exactly what mother-baby homes are and when and why they were started.
I don't know that much, but what I think I know, I'll tell you. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. There weren't many of them. The Bon Secours homes, they were called. First thing you got to remember is that prior to everybody becoming perfect in the 1960s, having children out of wedlock was seen as not a good thing. It was seen as, suboptimal, often done by people whose moral sense was somewhat flawed. So what would happen is that in places that were benighted and medieval in mind like that, like Ireland, and like the United States and Britain and France and Italy and Mexico and Canada and everywhere. Anyway, what would happen is that if a girl got pregnant out of wedlock and didn't want to be branded as an immoral person or a lady of loose virtue, she would do something to have the child born quietly. And bear in mind that a lot of these girls in Ireland were poor girls. These were not chicks coming from well-to-do homes. If you came from a well-to-do home, generally you were sent off, and this wasn't just in Ireland, you were generally sent off to stay with relatives. And then when you come back, and then a few months later, your parents would adopt a kid. That's why very often in later years, Jack Nicholson was one of these guys. Another was, Kevin Spacey played him in Beyond the Sea. Great entertainer.
Bobby Darin.
Bobby Darin. Both of them discovered that the older girl they grew up with thinking was their sister was really their mother. And so that's the way the things were done, because that way the girl in question could be close to her kid growing up, and the kid would have a good home, but could also have a decent marriage without being thought of as a cheap tramp, which was the terrible thought that they had in those days. Well, what if you didn't have well-to-do parents or parents who were understanding or willing to take the kid in? What did you do then? Good question. In Ireland, you had the Bon Secours homes, where you could go with a minimum of publicity, and like none, give birth to your child, and then go back and pick up the threads of your life wherever you left off. There was a downside. You were never going to see your kid again. The plus side is that they would try to find a good home. Now remember that Ireland in the 50s was a very poor place. It wasn't the Celtic tiger of song and story that it became. So they came up with a deal whereby place these infants with Catholic families in the United States. Now remember too that the way they looked at things at the time, Irish people in those days emigrated to the United States for economic reasons all the time, because there was a lot of money in the States and there wasn't in Ireland. So the notion was, steal a march, we get the baby a prosperous home in the States. They'll be raised by a loving Catholic family with a bit of money, and they will have a future ahead of them that would be far better than any they'd have in Ireland. Certainly than they would have as the child of a single mother who would then be looked at by everyone as kind of a slut. That's the way it was. Now see, today, when everyone is encouraged to be a slut, this is kind of incomprehensible to us. when you have very famous women saying that they need to they won't feel fulfilled until they have a baby, single mother of course, from whatever source, whether it be artificial insemination or friendly volunteer. And see, then the baby is, as baby should be, I guess, sort of a fashion accessory or a pet, and doubtless will get the very best upbringing possible because the lady is doing it entirely for the child's sake, of course. Again, as a people who find infanticide very good, our moral sense is very reliable, and we're in a very good position to judge the past because we are so noble and so wonderful. I mean, it's amazing how wonderful we are, really. If you stop and think about how beautiful we are and how morally responsible we are, I don't know, I'm blown away every time I think of it. And unlike you guys who should be grateful that you were born at all, I come from that terribly benighted time where had my mother aborted me, she might have gone to prison. See, and the problem with that is that it gave those of us who were born in those days this weird kind of self-assurance. Like, I'm here, deal. Whereas you guys know that you're only here on sufferance. And you should be grateful that you were allowed to live at all.
One of these days, I'm going to string these types of quotes together and just do a big old video of modernist Charles Coulombe, a modern man.
You bet. It's done as great. Every time I look during the summer of love, the summer of hot flaming love that we just endured, the hugga burning love all over our land. The spirit be moving all over the land, the flame of the spirit. And I looked at all those Antifa kids and so forth running around. I thought, oh, my generation is wrought. Annoying as the children were, especially with the burning and looting, you've got to really look more closely at the parents and the educators that produced them. This wasn't by accident. These kids didn't jump out of a Cracker Jacks box. No, it's because they were formed by people who were very stupid or lazy or evil or all three. I don't want to force people into boxes. You can have all three at once. It's not restrictive. But the modernist Charles Coulombe, believe me, I understand the time I live in. I accept. Oh yeah, you bet. Human beings are here to be owned and ruled by their betters. Yeah, I get it. And they should be bloody grateful they were allowed to be born at all. Abso-bloody-lutely. Heil, y'all.
Okay, over an hour long by my watch.
Wow.
This has been one of the best pre-shows in a long while, I don't mind saying. A lot of meat on the bone, Charles. We thank you for that.
I was inspired by the beautiful clothing of our patrons. When you're looking at this, and they say elegance is dead. They say chivalry is dead. I say shows what you know. You don't have our patrons, because if you did, you wouldn't have made such an idiotic statement. That's what I have to say to people who say things like that. If you could see our patrons every week the way I do, well, your belief and your faith and your hope and trust in Ma, apple pie, and the American flag, and Chevrolet, would be completely restored. But they go together in the good old USA. Baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet.
Who's saying that?
Some lady for Chevrolet.
I was going to
40
say,
years ago.
That seemed like that's an interesting decision to put Chevrolet in there at the end. It seemed boldly commercial.
Oh, you think?
Yeah.
See the USA in your Chevrolet. America is waiting for your call. What?
For some reason, Oh, it's funny
Yeah.
how the world has changed so much that when we're talking about commercials and you're doing a Chevrolet jingle, it's like that's such a pleasant jingle. What a delightful commercial. I'd love to watch commercials if it were old-timey commercials like that. But the commercials
You
that are
can.
on now make me sick to my stomach.
You
It's
can
like
watch you can watch lots of old commercials on YouTube because a lot of people feel the way you do. It's amazing.
we need to grow this into an actual channel and to put commercials in and to put good old-timey commercials in, like Winston. Winston tastes good like a
like a
cigarette
cigarette
should.
should.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
Tarryton smokers would rather fight than switch. And
Pop fizz fizz. Oh, what a relief it is. I know a pretty good chunk of those old-timey commercials.
They're great. They're great. I mean, I tell you, Don Draper and his buddies did not realize that they were creating a whole new genre of American literature.
Mm.
They thought they were just making some money, but no.
All right. Well, stay tuned. This is just the beginning. Giant memes contest coming up on the full episode. We cannot wait. Coming right at you.
Oh, my stars. You just wait until you see the memes. I'll tell you what. If every meme was as productive as these memes of production, well, let me tell you something. We'd have beaten the Soviets in the space race. Well, we did, so never mind. Anyway, we'll see you in the real show in just a few minutes. Don't move.